We are live. Hello, hello, hello. I'm just going to wait for some people to actually start looking. And I'm going to go ahead and give you guys the URL. Hopefully this should work. And we'll be able to see how many people are viewing here in a second.
I see on YouTube the little auto thing that they're live.
So well, nobody's watching us yet.
What is this?
So we are on welcome to the 50th Greyscalegorilla podcast episode. Give it up.
Ever. Woo! I'm trying to get a tweet ready, but I'm trying to get a tweet out. So
50.
The big 50 people. So this is our 50th podcast. They said it couldn't be done. We're here to prove them wrong. Thank you for joining us. We're looking like the viewers are climbing steadily here. It's good to see everybody out there, watching us here on our 50th episode. I'm going to try to get the chat going here. And
now, don't forget that this is also recorded, and many people here are not watching live, and they're going to be a little sad. So let's describe. First of all, 50th episode. We're recording this live. But if you missed it, what we're going to do today is what? What are we doing here?
Well, we are bringing the Greyscalegorilla podcast to the people. And we're going to sit here and we're going to answer questions and we are going to talk about the events of the day, just like our regular old podcast. But instead, we're going to do it live and hopefully interact with some of these awesome people that are showing up now. It looks like we've got 99 viewers here, a lot of people in the chat.
Yep. Filling up quick.
So you guys can, I'm just going to say hello to everyone.
Manually, each person?
Yeah, every single person.
Hi, Rick. Hi, Wayne. Hi, Joel. Hi, Chris. We'll be doing it the whole time.
I know. So I don't know if there's a way for me to show the control room or the chat in this room where we are. You guys will probably have to log into that URL that I gave you. And
I have the chat, yeah.
Yeah, just do it in there, and it's probably fine.
Anyway, to answer some questions, baby. Bring them questions.
Let's start off for anybody that's new to our podcast that maybe hasn't checked it out before. This is our 50th episode. We recommend going back and watching. I don't know, maybe not all 50, but the 25 that we're together on are pretty good. I can't speak for the other
generation.
That's true. So yeah, my name is Chad Ashley. We got Chris Schmidt. Say hi, Chris.
Hi, everybody. How's it going? I got new lighting in my room. Thanks, Chad.
No problem, buddy. And we got our good pal Nick Campbell, the gorilla himself.
Hi, everybody. I'm tuning in from the car today, so hopefully my Wi-Fi or my cellular data is going to work okay. I'm out in the middle of Nebraska, just starting my road trip out west, and so hopefully I'm looking good, sounding good, and I'm ready to talk to the crew. 50 episodes. This is awesome.
Yeah. So what is so 25 with the three of us? 25 before that. What was before we get into the show, I just want to ask which one was your favorite so far? Let's start with you, Chris. What's your favorite episode of the podcast?
All of us are going to have the same favorite, and that was when we were talking about Mac versus PC, and it's when I had just recently changed over to having a PC. I bounce between the two, and we had Nick kind of going through like a little existential crisis, like right on the podcast. It was amazing. It was so much fun.
I'm slowly realizing I might actually have to own a Windows computer. That was a good hour. You could actually see my, when the Grinch smiles in the Christmas movie, and he smiles and smiles. That was me, but it was like opposite over the hour. It was just more and more sad. And yeah, that's a good one.
That I think I will agree. That was probably my favorite one because it was the one where Nick was like the most real and the most raw, I think, because it really did. It kind of made him think about how he's going to approach computers in the next 10 years. And you can see the look on your face where you just kind of like this like kind of scared but like willing kind of look in your face. It was pretty amazing.
Well, that's why we watch movies and TV shows and whatnot. We want to see character arcs, and we saw an arc in that episode. How often do you get that on a podcast?
I know. It was like you couldn't have planned it any better than that. I felt like it was a perfect representation of what you were thinking at that time. Anyway, so we're going to kick this off with a little bit of GSG news like we always do. So we've got our last tutorial last week, which was soft bodies by our very own Chris Schmitz, doing very well. If you haven't checked that out, please go take a look. Chris breaks down all of the weird parameters in Cinema 4D soft bodies and kind of makes sense out of them, because that's something that, you know, I think is really cool, because a lot of times they name these things in such strange ways that you're not really sure what to do. You like, I want to get something that's kind of gelatinous, but I don't know the settings. Chris, you want to talk a little bit about your tutorial?
Yeah, I actually just put the no, it didn't let me put the link. I was going to put the link in the chat, but yeah, it was just a little quicker tutorial, trying to aim for something a little bit faster, tackling the soft body settings. And the goal in that tutorial, it's about a half hour long. The goal is to be able to intelligently change the settings. I think if most people, and even me often, it's like, oh, I need something kind of jello-y, and you just keep on changing settings until it looks more and more and more jello-y, where hopefully after you watch this tutorial, you'd be like, I want to make jello. I know I need to change this setting, and this setting to these amounts. Cool, now I've got it. So that's the goal in that one. So
yeah, I really like that one, because coming from using different softwares, like, you kind of realize that like each piece of software has like their own word for like dampening and all that crap.
damping.
So damping.
Yep, that's a tough one. It's not damping. It's not dampening, which is what I want to say. It's damping.
Damping. Okay, so that's on our site now. It's also actually also on YouTube, in which you are already at if you're watching this. So don't leave the show to watch it. Just add it to your brain and watch it later. So what else is going on? We got a new tutorial coming out this week. Hopefully it's going to be Nick talking about displacements. Nick, you want to tell us about what you got planned?
Well, yeah, so hopefully I'm actually working today to make sure that gets uploaded. I left for my road trip and thought I uploaded it to YouTube, and now I can't access my my main office computer. So we're gonna pull a little MacGyver move, get some friends some keys. My wife might help out. They're gonna break into my office. They're gonna make sure that tutorial is uploaded for you guys, and it's gonna be all about subpoly displacement and also the displacement modifier. Is that, yeah, the displacement deformer, that's what it's called. And when I made the original subpoly displacement tutorial, it was like 2009, 2010, and I don't even think that displacement modifier or that displacement deformer was even a thing at the time. The only way to do all that little detail was through subpoly displacement, and that was it. And so in this tutorial, I show you the subpoly way of making, you know, geometry move and deform, but then I show you it the way that I've been doing it for the last few years, that we actually don't really have a tutorial about, or at least a short tutorial about, all about how to get a deformation on your geometry with a noise pattern. You could use images. In fact, if you saw Chris's tutorial where he made that galaxy, what would you call that thing? It was like a galaxy map that you expanded out and deformed. The Hubble telescope photo.
Oh, are you talking about the hair pillar tutorial?
Kind of. You took the photo of the galaxy stuff, and then
that was a live show one.
Yeah. Anyway, if you want to learn about displacing geometry, check for that tutorial tomorrow. And there's also a bonus tutorial coming out as well, all about all the color correction, Photoshop, all the little tweaks that I did after I hit render to help make that stuff look even better. And it's all based on some daily renders that I did, I don't know, a couple weeks ago now. That was all this deformed geometry with physical render. So check it out. I'm really excited to get these out. They're short, punchy tutorials, and they should be out, you know, in the next maybe one tomorrow, and hopefully in the next week for the second one as well.
Awesome.
Wow, I had a lot of coffee, guys. I mean,
wow.
I go on a road trip, and I'm sitting in a car for 8 hours a day trying to drive across out west, and coffee is a big part of this process. So if I am talking too fast, sorry about that. And and to answer the question too, my favorite podcast episode was last week doing the Q&A. I really enjoy that format because it makes us kind of think on our feet a little bit. And I'm also excited that this week we're doing more Q&A from the live stream. Is that right?
The plan.
That's the plan. Yeah. In fact, it's a perfect segue to. There's two segues I could choose from in my head that popped up while you were describing your favorite podcast, and your tutorial. Because somebody asked on the chat over here, Volley asks, "What about your upcoming products, GSG LUTs? What is this going to be?" And this is a perfect opportunity to talk about Greyscalegorilla LUTs. For those of you that don't know and maybe have seen us talk about it or maybe seen the hashtag, in the second tutorial that Nick's going to be putting out, we'll kind of touch on this product. And it's a really cool product. We're very excited about it. It's really, for those of you who don't know what a LUT is, it's a lookup table. It's essentially a fancy word for color grade. Typically, they were used to kind of emulate film stock. So if you're doing VFX in a film, you might use one to emulate a certain stock that the film was going to go out to. But then somewhere along the lines, people realized that a LUT is actually a really cool way to store color grade a look that you put on your footage, your render, whatever. And it's stored as a file, and this LUT file can be loaded into just about every kind of Adobe app you can think of to create and apply a really cool color look. So we at Greyscalegorilla kind of pooled all of our favorite looks together and all of our favorite color grade kind of vibes that we've done over the years and created a huge library of LUT files that you can use in Photoshop, you can use in After Effects, Premiere, Nuke, Fusion, whatever it is that can accept a LUT file, you can use these. So that's very soon we're going to be announcing and talking about GSG LUTs, and it's a really cool product. It's great for photography. It's great for your renders. It's great for anything that you want to throw some really cool color on, really. So we're super excited about that. But let's get over to the chat and see.
Wait, I got one thing as we.
Oh, you got something? Okay, go ahead.
And I'm going to even put a link in there as well. Okay, everybody, we're going to be starting to take your questions. So we want you to start putting questions in the chat, and then we'll try and tackle as many of those as we can. But I have a request for everybody in the chat. Don't try not to ask us technical questions about software, because that's not fun to talk about in a podcast. If you do have, especially if you have Cinema 4D questions, I run a live show every Wednesday called Ask GSG, and hopefully that link pops up, but they don't seem to like links in there. So, but anyway, if you just look for C4D Live, or I'll put a tweet out, but I do a live show every Wednesday where you can come in and ask Cinema 4D questions, and we spend 2 hours just answering Cinema 4D and Photoshop and motion graphics questions. So try and save your technical questions for that day, but start throwing your questions at us in the chat. And yeah, let's do that.
All right, so you've gotten the rules. Let's see if everybody plays by the rules. Oh, look, there your thing just came up. Jesse Van Alderen wants to know, hi, fellas, how do you start the creation process? Is there a lot of real-life sketching involved? I'll start with that one, and we'll pass it to the group. I used to sketch all the time. Like, that was kind of what I did all through high school and college, is draw. And then somewhere along the lines, I learned 3D, and I started to draw less, and I drew less, and I drew less and less and less. So now for me, my sketch process is pretty much non-existent. I don't really do it other than to like sketch out a really, really rough idea. So no, I don't really sketch. I go right to the computer. That's kind of become I got so proficient at it that I just started working that way. But I know, Chris, you sketch, right? You sketch pretty regularly.
I enjoy drawing and sketching, but I do it at pretty much completely unrelated to any 3D. Like if I'm doing a daily render or any kind of project along those lines, I don't. The only time that I might sketch something before doing it 3D would be some sort of character, which is just something I do for fun every once in a while. So yeah, sketching is not part of my 3D process. But if I was doing more production, that maybe I would, but I'm not. So, but I do enjoy drawing.
How about you, Nick? Do you draw still?
No, I'm not really good with a pencil or anything. I think it's important if you work in a large team to make sure that people understand like what you're trying to do, but I don't even think a sketch is good for that. So what I would say, if it's actual advice to this person, is do do what makes what brings out the creativity in you. Like if you're a good drawer, or that frees your mind up to like get ideas, do that. But I would say if you're working on by yourself, get to the computer as fast as possible, because that's where you're going to find the mood and the tone and the style of it more. I don't know. Sketching's just never been a part of my creative process. It just starts in Photoshop if it's working with a team, and I just go straight to cinema if I'm working by myself.
Cool. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that it's kind of different for everybody, and whatever works for you, do that. I mean, it's something that I wish I were better at drawing, but it's just unfortunate that I don't do it as much anymore. So let's keep this moving. Chris, why don't you pick a question, and we can just kind of we can each take a turns picking questions, or I can just moderate. It's up to you guys.
I wasn't looking for the questions.
Yeah, Chad, if you want to moderate maybe, and then
yeah, I'll go.
And then just hand it off.
Fine. All right, so we got another question here about hardware, and I'm just gonna, anybody that's wondering what kind of hardware we rock and what we're into, they can just go to our website, and we have a page on there called resources, and it breaks down what everybody uses in terms of gear. So yeah, if you want to know anything about that, you can just open up a tab and check that out while you're listening or whatever. But yeah, it lists all of our hardware, our software, even a little pocket dump where we kind of talk about what we bring with us everywhere that we go. So
wait,
yeah,
I've got a question here.
Somebody
asked. Mark is asking about how we tackle speeding and timing in terms of animation. What makes for a good flowing animation? It's a bit abstract, but I think timing of an animation is everything, and that is true. I'm going to start the beginning of this one.
Go for it.
I had a teacher one time say that animation, like keyframes, keyframes are like you think of like a character, you get the key poses, like they strike that pose and that's like a master pose. And it's like, those are great, but those are keyframes. Actual animation is what happens getting from a pose to another pose. That's the animation. So your keyframes are great, but it's the arcs that happen between those that is the real animation. But overall, just speaking very abstractly when it comes to animation, I think it's important to think of it in the way you would like a picture or even music, where you want to have areas of contrast. Like you might want something moving very quickly in isolation, but another thing, you want nice, smooth, broad strokes, and adding kind of like a flow and some variation to, you don't want it to get overly repetitive. You don't want a whole bunch of really fast animation all the time. It should go fast and then suddenly something quick, and then slow down, and then a little repetition, and then something big and broad, and then some really tiny, subtle animation. Like mixing that all in together, that's how you create like a cool flow and visual interest, at least for me.
No, that's good. That's a great point. I think a lot of it too, even things that are beyond motion design animation and kind of dip more into character animation, you can get a lot from reading books by Preston Blair and learning from some of the Disney, the greats at Disney. There's so many books out there that describe what animation is at its most fundamental form, and it's just the breaking up of time and being able to do what Chris said and create ebbs and flows and hold when you need to hold and let things play out and when to let things breathe. And I think, getting a little bit nitty gritty, one thing that I don't see enough of is anticipation. And anticipation is an animation technique where something needs to anticipate. You need to, yes, there it is, the Animator's Survival Toolkit that Chris is holding up, a very awesome book. But anticipation is a really powerful animation technique that allows people to kind of anticipate the motion of your character. Like if you look at anything, something always kind of sits back before it goes forward, and it builds up. You can kind of almost tell it's like bringing energy in and then flying out. So anticipation is a really huge element. And what do you think, Nick? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I've always seen animation is this. Everything's about contrast, right? So when you have words on the page, the only reason you could read them is because of the surrounding like white paper with the black ink, right? Or the reverse. And same with sound. Like the only thing that really makes the sound important is that there's no sound before it. And so with animation, like Chris had it right with fast, slow kind of style. And for me, I'm always thinking of it through music. I came through animation through music. And I literally animated to music, and I tried to like bring out an instrument into a little, sphere or a cube moving around in After Effects. And that's how I learned to animate. And I think for me at least, there's something there with music that informs that ability to go fast and slow and take a break. So if you think, like, even open up a piece of music that has a lot of contrast to it. This is why electronic dance music and stuff is so great for animating to, and like why like half the demo reels started using like dubstep kind of stuff, because there's so much contrast in that music. It's like loud and quiet and soft, and it stops. And so find a little chunk of music 10 seconds long that has contrast and animate to it and make it look like they're dancing to the music, or even just use a little sphere, right? Just animate a little cube to dance to the music, and you'll start to feel that like emotion of fast and slow. And sometimes I do it with my hands as well, where I'm trying to animate with my hands first to understand the speed, and then I'll try to translate it. So if I'm listening and I'm like, bup, 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 there's a move right there. So like, you feel free to download that little bit right there if you want to get sick of my voice and
already done
that loop. But take that little phrase, right? The way that a jazz musician would take a phrase and build a little piece out of it, and bring that phrase into your animating program and animate to that, and you'll start to see some of that speed differences.
That's actually a really good point. I think we may have had this conversation once before about the importance of audio in animation, even if you're not animating to an audio track. I think I remember reading a story once, or maybe it was in an animation class, where the Warner Brothers animation team, the Bugs Bunny 1930s, 1940s, even if they didn't have a piece of music kind of decided on yet for the piece, they always were animating to some orchestral track that would help them with their tempo, because tempo to them, when they're doing those kinds of stories, was so important for hitting beats. And I think music does this naturally, where you just kind of, it's just ingrained in our DNA to anticipate when something's going to happen in music, that you kind of take it for granted. And when you start to work with animation that's timed out to music, it starts to feel more natural, because it's hitting on a beat, or it's hitting on, every other beat or something. And even if you're animating to music that's not even going to be used, it can be helpful just for timing purposes.
That sounds like a nice little segue to the other bit of news that you didn't mention yet, Chad.
Oh, yeah. Do you want me to mention it, or do you want to mention it?
Go for it. So
I'm not sure how many of you out there have been following stuff that's been going on Twitch lately and whatnot, but the DJ Deadmau5 actually started Twitch casting. I don't know what you call it. I'm not a Twitch person, but he started twitching uncontrollably.
Live streaming.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you. I was struggling for that word for some reason. He started twitching.
The thing we're doing right now.
So yeah, exactly. So he was streaming himself in Cinema 4D, and it got kind of everybody all buzzed about it. So like, oh my God, Deadmau5 is using Cinema 4D. You got to see this. So that kind of turned into a lot of people, tweeting at Deadmau5 and whatnot. And as it turns out, he was watching our tutorials. And so we kind of got in touch with him via Twitter DM. And it turns out he's a fan of our tools and our tutorials. And he had requested some features to be added to Signal. And those of you who don't know what Signal is, it's one of our plugins that we have on our website. And they were kind of cool and audio related. And this is where I'll hand it off to Chris, because he knows more about it than I do. So
I'm not going to get super specific here, but it's a new feature we're working on for Signal that involves BPM, beats per minute. That's all I'm going to say. And who knows when it'll be out? We don't know. It's all tinkering and playing right now, but it's going well, and it's fun, and I'm really excited to have a cool new feature in Signal. So
yeah, and it's super fun, and it kind of works really well with what we were just talking about in terms of music and things like that. And so if you don't know what Signal is, make sure after the show you go check it out. It's a really fun animation tool.
I've got another cool question queued up if you want.
Go for it.
from Anike is saying, "Hi guys, do you have anything in particular that you wish you could spend more time doing or working on, a particular project or hobby or software?" And why don't we start with Nick on this one?
Ooh, me. Well, I'll tell you, part of this road trip, and I've been doing this trip for, I think I figured out like 8 years or something like that. Part of the reason
An
for this
8-year trip? No, sorry, that was a bad joke.
Yeah, 8 years in a row. Is that, how do I say that? Annually? So part of the reason for this trip is I kind of think of it like my New Year's. It's kind of my time to think about the year and what happened and what I want to do with my life the next year and all those big questions, right? So for me, stuff that I'm trying to work on more is talking to creative people and designers and 3D about the stuff that I think some educational platforms just don't do very well, or they just don't have time to do very well. So for me, something I'm obsessed with right now that I want to do more of, that I wish I had more time to do more of, that I'm trying to find the time to do more of, is to talk about some of the parts of learning that I feel like don't get taught in regular traditional school. So how to, like, here's one, for example, like how to be a self-directed learner, how to understand that you want to go tackle a project and go make something, and then how do you give somebody the tools so that they could go learn on their own and be able to be successful at that?
I think schools have a vested interest in not teaching that.
Yeah, that's kind of important. Like if they teach you how to learn. So for me, the way I like to say it is like, how do you learn how to learn? And so thing like just Googling it, right? So I feel like so many students are like disempowered or not really taught how do you go find information and figure out if it's right, or figure out if it's true, or figure out if it's right for you. That's something that is a really weird topic for me that I'd like to learn more of, that I want to talk more about. And the second thing is, for me in general, is just like this idea of doing a creative job for a living. I feel like there's still this really kind of, still a stigma of like, oh, you want to go be an artist, good luck with that, but come back home when you want to go get a real job, right? I feel like there's still a lot of kind of family dynamic and social stigma about being a creative person for a living. But I feel like that's where all the best jobs are popping up. That's where all of like, this is a bigger topic than we have time to do, but that whole idea of like, what's the path for people that want to be creative and go make stuff? That's been really, really interesting to me. And it's something I'm trying to learn more of and talk more about. So, yeah, so hopefully look for more of more about that in the near future.
I don't have much to add to that. That's kind of exactly like, I mean, it's an interesting subject, learning how to learn. It's just something that I think a lot of us that are kind of, it comes naturally to some, and some people just need some tips in that area. And it's definitely, it's something that I have not seen tackled well, online, at least. In person, I've gotten a lot of advice from people that help me in that area, and I'm also just one of those people that never stops wanting to learn. So I'm always looking up things to try to teach myself. But
right, but the question is, what's a project you wish you could be working on?
Oh, right. So a project I wish I could be working on. I think there's been a like a little PSA kind of short thing, little film that I've been wanting to do and just haven't had time to really tackle, and it's all up in my head, and I just need to get it out and do it. I just haven't had the time to kind of dedicate to it. But yeah, it's like I've been wanting to do something charitable and make a piece of animation that raises awareness about a specific charity that I think needs more attention, and it's something that I just need to find time to do, and that's something that I personally would love to see more animators doing, is taking their abilities to tell stories and their abilities to make people pay attention to things and using that for good causes. I think that's a really interesting idea. Instead of maybe doing a spec piece or that is centered around a fake product or a tennis shoe, maybe getting in touch with a charity that actually could use the attention and figuring out ways to help them get their message out. Just sounds like a cool thing to do.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea. All the time, I think even we as a group will be like, oh, like if you don't have a portfolio, build your portfolio piece. Like make a fake ad for Coca-Cola, and now you've got a portfolio. But why not make that for Doctors Without Borders and then give that to them? And now it's real work. Of course, we're talking about a certain quality. You can't assume they're going to take it, but if you talk to them.
I mean, it was an idea that I had a while back, and it just seemed like because at the time I was like looking for something, a side project or whatever, and I went through that exact thing. I'm like, well, do I do a spec spot for I don't know, some brand, or should I try to use my time and give that to somebody that actually can use it to benefit people rather than just to benefit myself in my own work? Anyway.
Yeah, well, now my answer is going to be terrible compared to donating your time for that kind of stuff. But my pet thing on the side, well, I go through a lot of different hobbies and I always kind of cycle back around. But the one I keep going back to is I have a lot of fun tinkering around in Unity, the 3D game engine. So I've learned a bunch of code because of it, and it plays really well with Cinema 4D. So just kind of playing around and tinkering with video game ideas. Not that I have any like grand ideas or anything, but I just like sitting down and tinkering and making tiny little projects and being like, oh, look, that's really cool. And it's a little playable game now. So I like jumping in and out of that. I don't have any big specific plan, but I like it.
That's cool. I wish I knew more game stuff. Definitely. All right, so let's get back to the chat here. Let me find a good question for us.
I've got one. I keep trying to find one when we're down.
You got them all.
So yeah, but I've got a question here that I think is best answered by you, Chad.
Okay.
From Inquisition, they're asking, what do you think the future of 3D animation? How will the future of 3D animation differ from present 3D animation? What do you want to change about the process?
I think the future of 3D animation is going to be super approachable. I think that's a horrible adjective, but I think it's going to be very approachable. I think that in the future, 3D is just going to be seen as another form to create content, and it's not going to be seen as a big technical hurdle that you're going to have to learn, and it's going to be this crazy complex process. I think there still will be room for complexities in 3D. As the technology grows, so will the thirst for complex things, but I think it's going to become a bit more ubiquitous. I think it's going to be, not a big deal to add 3D to your video that you post on your phone or whatnot. I mean, you're already seeing that with Project Felix from Adobe. You're seeing it in Microsoft adding 3D to everything that they're doing. So I think that it's going to be much more approachable, and it's going to be easier. The best part about it is it's going to be easier to tell people what we do for a living. People will understand it more, I think, in the future, which is kind of good, because right now it's hard to describe what we do. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, it's gonna go down that path of like digital photography and become more accessible. I don't think it'll be quite as ubiquitous as like a digital camera, but what's interesting to me is the automated 3D systems that are popping up. That whole scene is really interesting to me. Like, think of Facebook. How many of you guys got the Facebook bit? Well, you guys aren't big on Facebook, I know, but you who are, Facebook is rendering out 3D animations that have your photos in them algorithmically. So Facebook has a robot that they built that is going and finding your favorite photos and all your friends. And there's literally like a dancing robot made out of all the photos of your friends. That's this really cool animation. It's a 3D animation. And it's made procedurally. It has to be, right? Like, nobody's hand making these. They're building an algorithm to go out and do this stuff. And I think that's kind of the future for a lot of simple 3D stuff, is this ability to go like, here's my logo, 3D robot, and give me back like 10 different versions of it, and then I could pick one for my client, like on the low end. And then on the high end, it's going to move splintered out into all these renderers. But I mean, that's like that's not super far out. That's like the next year. That's like the The simple stuff is going to get more, is going to get cheaper to make, and the crazy 3D stuff and the movie expensive stuff is going to get more realistic and more crazy. But I feel like that's just stating the obvious. But that's usually whenever you try to like guess the future, you're either super wrong or you're randomly right because you guessed right. So it's a difficult question.
I think that, I think more people are used to dealing with content and media than they were 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's just you talk to anybody that doesn't even do motion design or 3D or VFX, and they know Photoshop enough to get something done. They know how to edit stuff on their phone, how to edit video. It's just, the bar is constantly moving, and I think 3D is the new 2D. So it's just going to be a given that my kids are going to know some aspect of 3D is just going to be a part of what they do, whether it's VR, AR, or like you said, creating shareable content. It's going to be part of their vocabulary. It's just how deep do you want to go with it? Just like, I can take a really good picture with my phone, but I'm not a photographer. The same way that you're going to be able to do 3D, but if you want to be a 3D artist, you're still going to have to go in and dive deep, I think. Anyway,
well, 3D is the new if 3D is the new 2D, then you know what's next.
4D?
Cinema 4D?
That's right. That's right, baby.
Oh, that's funny.
I need to drink way less coffee, guys. I'm sorry.
Yes, you're out of your mind. I hope you're not driving
Feeling
right
a little
now.
batty. I'm not. Well, yeah, air out a little bit. There we go.
Not so safe. All right, so hit us up with some questions. We're checking out the chat again.
I've always got one ready. If you don't
okay,
have one.
what do you got, Chris?
All right, from Evan, he says, when creating portfolio work and applying to different studios, what should be the ratio of personal work and style compared to mimicking what's being done in the industry right now?
So let me see if I'm understanding this question right. Is what percentage of their demo reel should be stuff from their own brain that they've made, whatever that might be, and what percentage of it should be them, copying something that they've seen?
Yeah, well, like in the days when like suddenly everybody's filling up letters with liquid, like it was a valuable thing in your demo reel to fill up letters with liquid or some variation of that. Or you could be doing some crazy stuff with like fuzzy orbs bouncing around, like, which is just a fun project for yourself. So should you cater to the industry as it currently is, or go your own direction, or what's the balance between the two?
I'll let Nick start this one. I'm formulating.
I would say if you're having the question, what I think what you're really asking is, should I make it more general so that more people might hire me? Like if I show that I could do all these industry standard things, or let's just take you for example. What's his name again?
It's Evan.
Evan, hey buddy. Let's take you for just specific. If you want more of a chance to get hired, then show more of industry standard stuff that they know that they can hire you as a freelancer to do that specific trick. If that's what you want to do for a living, and you're trying to get your foot in the door and this is your first gig, be more spread out. Show your personal style, show your work, but also show that you can tackle real stuff. If you're later down the road and you have more of an artistic ability and you're a little bit more confident with your personal work, then that's the time when you want to start removing the things from your reel that you don't want to do in the future. So it's really based on you and everybody out there listening. It's like, and I think we mentioned this even last week, you need to put on your reel what you want to do, because that's what people will hire you for. So if you really are not wanting to get a job doing standard stuff, don't put it out there. And if you like doing all of it, then put it all in there. So make sure you're putting on there what you like doing and what you're best at. If you did a tutorial about character animation and you did that one character and it turned out kind of okay and you really didn't like doing it, don't put it on your demo reel. So like think of it like that. Like what is it that you want? And then you will draw the people that are hiring to do what you want by what you put on your reel.
Yeah, well, I'll jump in before Chad does the kick-ass answer, but I would also say that, yeah, once you're more established, then you can start pushing your style. Like, there are artists who can have a style and they're constantly getting hired because different places want their style. But you can't do that early on. Like, nobody knows about your style and nobody knows what you can create, and it's not a popular style. But if you're the person who invented some look, then you are the authority on that, and people are going to want to come and talk to you about it. So
Yeah, I think both of you. I don't really have much to add, actually. I think that I'm fundamentally kind of against copying other people's work and putting it on your demo reel. I think that, let's say you want to, let's say typography is your thing and that's what you really want to do. I don't have a problem with you doing something in the style that maybe is similar to something else that's out there, but put your own spin on it, put your own flavor into it, and make it your own. Because ultimately, if you're, let's say somebody at I'll just use ILM because it's the first thing that comes to my mind. If you're at ILM, the last reel you want to see is a bunch of a bunch of renders of the Death Star. You know, like you probably get those 20 million times a day. But you're really interested in seeing what this other person did that is maybe in the same genre. Maybe it's still sci-fi, but maybe it's something of their own design, something completely original that kind of like, oh, that's cool. You know, I didn't think about that. And that to me is really the idea of taking what you want to do and putting it on your reel, as Nick said, but try to make it your own. Do something that's creative, whether it's a look or an unexpected animation twist or something that makes it your own. Because remember who you're sending your demo reel to, or who you're sending your links to, and what they probably see every day, and be aware of that in your head. Like, if you're trying to get a job at PsyOp, imagine what the reels they must get every day, and try to make yours stand out in a good way. And yeah, I mean, you guys pretty much said it.
I would say ultimately what I saw, and this is, you know, a little dated as far as how many years I've been out of directly in the industry, but what I saw was what they ended up hiring more of are people that are, yeah, they could do all that stuff, they could do all the regular stuff, and they opts to pull off kind of the what was around. But what they were ultimately interested in is them having a point of view that was beyond that. So that if a client came to them and said, hey, we're generic client number 5, can you make us this like shiny cartoony kind of thing that's kind of plain? They go, yeah, of course we could do that. We have all the people in the world to do that. But what they really wanted was to have a team that when the really cool stuff showed up, that they could flex their muscles, and that they could tap the styles from those people. So if you think of it that way, you do have to communicate that, yeah, of course I could pull off like, you know, a type animation. That was the big thing in my day, right? Like timing type to lyrics or a conversation. That was like a thing you had to show. You just kind of had to show that you knew how to do it. But that was almost like a given at a certain point, and you had to really bring more of your style out to it. I mean, ultimately, you're working with people, and I think people would rather work with somebody with a style and like that has their own vibe, rather than somebody that could just do all the standard stuff.
Yeah, I think aptitude. Yeah, no, what you're saying, and tell me if I'm right, is like you certainly have to have a certain level of ability in the job, whatever it is. You have to be able to do, you know, that part of it, the lowest, you know, entry point. But then beyond that, you need to be adding something to the equation. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. In other words, after they see your demo reel, it should be clear that you could pull off one of these standard effects, right? Like, of course I know how to do that. But also, what I also want to show you is some of the other style that I have. You know what I'm thinking of too is Peter Quinn did, I think it was Peter, did that video called Shit Showreel Say. the like snarky
The parody demo reel.
yeah, he basically made like a parody demo reel, and the whole thing was this really snarky, like, here's a glowy sphere with displacement, and here's liquid filling up in a jar, and here's that really weird like keyframe thing that everybody does. And he was kind of like making fun of it in a way, but what he was really showing was that he was really good at those styles. Like, in many ways, his were better than what he was making fun of. And so through that, he was communicating like, of course I know how to do this stuff, right? Of course. But he brought his style to that. And at the end of it, you're like, wow, he could fill up a glass with liquid, but he's got something else going on here. This tone and this style and this snark, and even just the way that it looked in the keyframes and the music, the whole thing was like, you're peering into what he could actually do, but he was actually showing you that through all the tropes. So I don't know if that's helpful, but think of it creatively. Like, if you're a creative person, you need to think of every part of your presentation to a client as creative. If you're being hired to come in and be a creative person, you should be impressive with your demo reel in some creative way, whether it's bring your art to that piece. That demo reel is one of the most important things you could build. Now I need. I'm just getting upset.
Yeah,
Roll down the
give
window.
him-
I think
give him
get yourself some air.
Well,
Chad,
I'm gonna kick my seat back.
There you go.
Oh yeah.
It's gonna pass
There we
out,
go.
I think.
Chad, got a perfect question for you to open up with here.
All right, hit me.
This is from Burn Force, and he's asking, how would you handle an artist that discounts certain applications you use, like a Maya or Moto artist that marginalizes Cinema 4D? How do you approach situations like these?
I'm not sure if I understand that when you say the word.
Well, okay.
That mean like
so there's somebody in Maya or Max or Moto or something, and they're like, oh, like Cinema 4D, like whatever, like.
that was me.
So that's why I'm throwing this question at you, because that was Chad. Chad was that person. So what would have been ways that someone could approach you that would have broken through that shell and been like, oh wait, let me check this out.
So yeah, before I used Cinema 4D, which actually it was like not that long ago, I was on 3ds Max. Before that, I was on Maya, did a little bit of XSI, all that jazz. And I looked down on Cinema 4D, looked down my nose at it as if it were kind of a hobbyist program, and like, how good could it possibly be? It's not very expensive, and it's very user friendly, which to me at that time meant it must be simple and not complex, and not really something that a professional would use. And I think it was around R16 that it popped up on my radar again, and I was like, so you can do that in Cinema 4D? And then I saw all the amazing stuff that people were doing in MoGraph, and I was like, oh boy, that actually looks pretty good. And then, slowly but surely, I started seeing stuff that Nick was doing. I started seeing stuff that a lot of other studios were, like tons of motion design studios started dropping Maya and Max and picking up Cinema 4D. And I just became a fan of their work, to the point where I just started paying attention more to the software. And then around, I think it was 16, 17, probably right when 17, maybe it was 16. I think it was 16 that came out. And I was like, all right, I'm going to sit down and evaluate this, because there were no freelancers that knew 3ds Max in Chicago, very few knew Maya. And I was like, Chicago is a Cinema 4D town. I'm going to look at this software again and just come at it with a clear point of view. Sat down, opened it up, went through my checklist of all the jobs that I basically looked at all the jobs I had done at that point when I was at Digital Kitchen that I had used 3ds Max for. And I one-to-one tried to figure out how I would approach it in Cinema. And if it was easier or as easy, I marked that as a positive. And if it was harder to do in Cinema, obviously that was a negative. Didn't have any negatives on the list. Everything was positives. Everything was either easier or as easy to do in Cinema. And that's when I looked at that. And then on top of that, party rendering came out, which I was a huge fan of Arnold at the time and Octane. So it was just kind of a no-brainer for me to kind of take it more seriously. I started learning it once I got my foot in the, dip my toe into the Cinema 4D pool. I was like, this is great. I didn't know they had layers. I didn't know they had takes. I didn't know they had a workable XREF system. I didn't know they had, all this third-party stuff, X particles, everything that I was like really kind of like freaked out about them not having, they had. So it was misconception. And I think, so to get back to your question, anytime anybody tries to, what was the word that they used? Discount or discount. Anytime anybody says that it's not a high-end enough tool, I think just shows how little they know or how little they've experienced of Cinema 4D, because it is being used in a lot of different feature films in a lot of different areas. But feature films shouldn't be what everything is graded on, because there's not very many people in the world making feature films. There are a lot of people making content for advertising, content for gaming, content for everything else in the world. And there are a ton of people using Cinema 4D for that. And I think that Cinema 4D is as easy as you want it to be or as complex as you want it to be. And that's why I kind of really like it, because I can always figure something out because it's approachable. But then if I want to dive deep and get really crazy into Espresso, there's that too. And anyway, yeah. That's my answer.
Yeah. What was their name again, Chris? Did it move?
It was Burn something.
Burn.
It was a made up name. I don't think it was their birth certificate name.
Burn, Mr. Burn.
Mr. Burns.
Mr.
Burn
Burns.
Force.
The other thing to think about, like, I guess I don't understand the conceit of the question, because if they're happy, if your friend is happy with what they're doing and they have the tools that make their job, like they get their work done and they're fine and they're not missing anything, in some ways that's kind of okay too. Like they don't have to use what you use. If it's a team, then yeah, like you should all probably use the same piece of software. So I guess I'm missing some details in the question of like why it matters, why it.
I think it's more like your friend is mocking you. He's using Maya and you just use Cinema 4D.
But that's fine. But that's like, those are my favorite friends, right? Like this happens in Canon and Nikon and like everywhere else in every part of the world. There's a Pepsi and Coke argument every time you decide where to go eat lunch, right? Like at a certain point, if you're happy with your where you are, then you don't need to change. Chad saw things that Cinema did that he did a lot in other programs that was hard to do in other programs, and so he opened up his mind to the possibility that this might be a good one. He did the research and he switched. And what I would suggest for your friend is just to, like, if they're really that, it's almost a political argument at that point. If they're closed off to the idea that any new information will change their mind, then that's not a fun conversation to have with anybody, right? So with Chad in particular, I've actually done that. Chad, the Cinema's pretty good. It's actually picking up speed right now. And he's like, yeah, right. And he wasn't ready, and he wasn't ready, and that's okay. But I guess I'm missing some detail. But people come to different answers all the time, and actually they're right many times for many projects, depending on what they're working on. Like Maya is a really good solution, or 3ds Max is a really good solution if you're working on a huge giant team or whatever. So for me, I tend to think it's like a political thing, and if they're not open to it, like, I don't know, I would change the subject.
Yeah, I agree.
You
should shift over to religion or politics.
I don't think you should change the subject, because I think the real question isn't. You can just point the finger back to them and be like, "Well, why would you not use the best tool for the job?" I mean, if you think that one 3D program can do everything, and you don't need any other 3D programs, well, congratulations. You just found the best 3D program in the whole entire universe, and everybody should use it, because I've never seen one that does everything perfectly. So,
but there's so many dependencies. It's like, what are they working on? Are they, like, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
If they're doing more.
No, I'm saying, like, if it's good for them, great. But the idea of saying that, I guess the argument is like, I don't need to know anything else because this software does exactly what I want it to do. I've never met anybody that could and say that honestly, in my opinion. I've never met anybody that can say that and say it with absolute certainty. Because unless they're just literally their job consists of like the most simple thing, I can't see that. I mean, because the industry and everything is changing so much, and you need to know how to do this or that effect or this thing. And I just feel like I myself learned and before I even jumped into cinema, I learned Maya and Max because they did something that I wanted to do. It's like bringing it back to the music analogy that we always seem to go back to. I wanted to be able to play this other song, and the only way I could do it is if I learned to play the guitar. So I don't care what instrument I play. I just want to play that song. So to me, I think people, if they're just open to the experience of like, okay, well, Houdini is a good example for me. Houdini is starting to do things that I wish I could do in cinema. So I probably will someday learn Houdini because I don't care about the delivery mechanism. I care about the end result, and I want to get to that result and make it awesome. And if that's the tool or instrument I need to play, cool, I'll figure it out. Anyway, that's how I wish more people would just kind of approach it that way.
Yeah, it's politics.
It is. It's a very similar to a political argument.
It can be. It was worse, I think.
One more question?
Yeah, go for it. You got something, or do you want me to dig one
out? Yeah, I don't know. We're already at 1 o'clock, so I don't know how much more we're going to do. But we got a question from Rick Simpson, and this might be a little more directed over at Nick. And he's asking, should you post your work in progress stuff on social media, and portfolio sites, or only your polished, sexy work? Are mistakes and hard work sexy? And I want to kind of put a caveat on that of like, factually, like at Greyscalegorilla, we often, like when we're doing tutorials, it's like, oh, look, we messed that up. Let's go back and fix it somehow. So it works for us sometimes, but if you were putting Instagram pictures up, what do you think on that?
Well, my initial thought is that all the Instagram and Facebook and all those things tend to be more for your peers and more to get the word out about yourself and your work to other people that do similar work to you. And I think in that way, mistakes are awesome. Behind the scenes is great. Like, this didn't work, this worked. I looked for this. I tried to do this for 3 hours, and this is as close as I got. And then I woke up this morning and I figured it out. Like, those are the most amazing stories to share with your friends and community and all that stuff. And then I kind of see the demo reel that we were talking about earlier as like the official glossy one that you want to keep a little bit more, customer focused, if that makes sense. Like, so when you're doing all this behind the scenes stuff, I say go for it. I mean, anytime that you can share something that you're learning, and that you almost made it or this didn't work, I think that that's a great way to show people what your interest is and what you're interested in. So I would say go for it.
Yeah, it depends on your audience, I guess. If you're like a front-facing studio, then you probably want them to be your sexy images because that's who you're talking to. But if you're doing work and a bunch of your Twitter followers and whatever are your peers, like you can be rigging up, you can be animating this awesome character, and that final GIF of the character is going to be amazing. But I'm maybe even more interested in the screenshot, capture of it when you actually can see the joints and all the controls inside of it, and you see that moving around. It's like, oh, look at the rig that they built for this crazy creature. Like, I kind of like seeing that even more than maybe that final piece.
Yeah, I like seeing those too. I think the question here is like, what do you show your peers and what do you show your potential clients or potential employers? And I think that you just have to be careful about who you're talking to and where you're talking to them, because yes, absolutely. I'm a peer. I love to see your behind the scenes screenshots of, some rig or whatever thing you're working on. Not necessarily the thing you want to show your client or a potential client or even a potential employer. Maybe a potential employer if they're peers and they would understand the process behind it. Just, be wary of what's public facing, true to get you work or get you a job, and then what is going to build credibility in the scene with screenshots and sharing behind the scenes from a social media standpoint. I think just be careful there, just so you kind of have this. It's tricky, you don't want potential clients to think that you're learning the software. They're hiring you because they think you are an expert and will get their job done in a inexpensive and polished way, I guess.
Yeah, I think
anyway.
one more and we could roll.
I don't have any queued up.
Let's see. I just had something. Well, someone wants to know
Thanks for coming out, by the way, everybody. Coming to the live show. This is awesome.
Let's see. Somebody, we have a question about LUTs. We have a question about, yeah. So when is GSG? Phil Roberts wants to know, when is GSG LUTs coming out? As always, we try to be pretty, protect ourselves a little bit. Soon. I will say that within 30 to 45 days, probably.
Ooh, that's pretty specific. I'd say sometime in the next 6 months.
Yeah, I'll go with that. Soon, and you'll hear about it, I'm sure, as time goes on. That was a quick question. Here's a good one to end on. Billy Bolt wants to know, what is your favorite pie flavor?
Oh, nice.
Ooh, man.
Pie. All right. So who wants to go first? Favorite pie?
I can answer that really simply, and it's just got to be a nice hot apple pie a la mode, which I have a friend dinner night going on tonight, and we just picked that up for dessert. So tonight I'm gonna have my hot apple pie a la mode. I'm super looking forward to it.
Tell people what a la mode is in case they.
Oh yeah, sure. A la mode. It's just with ice cream. So pretty much even if you just buy a apple pie from the store, toss a slice in the microwave, and then put a nice scoop of vanilla ice cream on there, and it's so good. Blueberry is a close second, but ice cream doesn't go as well with blueberry. So if you want the ice cream, you got to go with apple.
Yeah, it's hard to beat that.
I can't. I'm with you on that. Midwest, man. Apple pie.
I think there must be some branding involved, because I'm having the same reaction. Dude, I think you nailed it.
That hot and cold combined. Oh, it's good.
Really good.
All right, well there you go. It's unanimous. So yeah,
a la mode is the key, man. You got to get the ice cream, and the ratio is key. I like enough crunchy stuff. I like when the crust is real sugar, like graham crackery, like real crispity, almost burnt, and then you get the little ice cream in there.
Oh man, I'm excited.
Dude, you're making me. I'm so hungry right now. All right, so with that, you just learned that the Greyscalegorilla dessert pie of choice is apple pie a la mode. So if you ever see us in a public function, you're obligated to buy us a slice of apple pie.
Just three spoons, and we're all sitting there sharing the same piece.
You should add that to the resource page.
Yes, I will. That's going to be updated later today. Anyway, thanks to everybody for dropping by. I see we peaked out at around 300 viewers. So thank you, everyone, for dropping by and checking out this live cast. It was kind of our experimental first thing. We'll probably do this a couple more times. As always, you can learn more about us at Greyscalegorilla.com. Make sure if you're listening to us on YouTube that you subscribe and like and all those fantastic things. And if you're listening to us on iTunes, drop us a review. Tell us what you think. Yes. It helps us out, and we love hearing from you. So Nick, we hope you have a safe road trip, and don't I don't know, stop for any questionable roadside food.
Only one hitchhiker at a time, Nick.
Yeah, I barely have room here. It's all computer gear and water bottles right now. So I don't even think I could do that. I'd have to get in the back. I'm actually heading to Denver too. And if you're in the Denver area, I think they still have tickets. Thursday night in Denver, they're having a meetup, and EJ is running it, and I'll be there doing this, answering questions and talking about 3D and design and all that stuff. So if you're in the Denver area, I'd love to see you guys. I'm going to roll through. I'll be there today, but I'll see you on Thursday. I got to make sure that's clear. I'll be in Denver Tuesday. That's today.
Couldn't be less clear.
Or Monday. The meetup, if you go to Chicago, if you go to Colorado C4D or something like that on Facebook, then you could get tickets there, and I hope to see you. It's at a brewery. We could have a beer and say hi. So I hope to see you there.
All right, Chris, any last words?
Yeah, if you got here late, be sure to, if you like these live streams, make sure you check out Ask GSG. If you just search Ask GSG, I'm sure you'll find it somewhere, which is a live show I do every Wednesday where I answer Cinema 4D technical questions and we try and create cool things for 2 hours. So be sure to check that out. And then
Greyscalegorilla.com/askgsg.
Yes.
There you go.
And then I'm going on my first ski trip this coming weekend. So maybe next week I'm going to be like in a full body cast. I'm fully anticipating that. So anything that's not that is a bonus.
All right. We'll be looking forward to the podcast in a cast.
Ooh, double cast.
Ooh.
Yes. See what I did there? All right, everybody. Thanks
good.
again. We'll see you at the next podcast. Again, happy 50th and hope you have a great week.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.